Back in the basement again today to talk about the Rogue Ohio Deadlift bar. I've had this one for well over a year now, and I want to talk a little bit about it because it's a very polarizing bar. Now, for the most part, I don't think it's the best deadlift bar on the market, but that being said, it's probably the one that I recommend the most to most people, and that's what I want to talk about in this particular video. So first, let's talk about why I don't think it's the best. And I think if you've ever talked to anyone or asked the question, it usually comes down to like the Texas versus the Rogue. And almost anyone who's used the Rogue bar will tell you that it feels stiffer than a Texas deadlift bar, and hence the Texas is the king of deadlift bars. More on that later. And I tend to agree a little bit. This bar does feel more stiff. Now, when you take a look at most of the deadlift bars on the market, they're all similarly spec'd, being 27 millimeters in diameter and around 190K tensile strength, which to my knowledge doesn't really have a lot to do with the actual flex or bend in the bar, but that number is more due to how much load it can take before it's permanently deformed. But definitely diameter, and what I think is the key most important aspect when looking at a deadlift bar when those other things are considered equal is the distance between where the plates are loaded on each sleeve. So the Rogue Ohio Deadlift bar's distance is 59.5 inches, give or take, whereas the Texas bar is almost 2 inches more than that, over 61 inches. And I think this is where the difference is really going to come into play. I like to use the analogy of a diving board when you have something in the center, and as you work your way out from where it's stabilized, you get more and more bend in that diving board. I think the same case here is true with these deadlift bars. As you're able to push the weight out further, the more flex and bend you're going to be able to get out of that 27 millimeter diameter shaft, which is also why a lot of people like to pull on deadlift bars with bumpers or even deep dish plates, because again, you're distributing the weight further, which is going to lead to more bend and flex in the bar. So again, this one's about 59.5. The Texas bar is about 61 and an eighth, maybe up to a half, depending on how good you are at measuring, which I've had a lot of practice. But that I think is the biggest detriment for the Rogue, and that is why it feels more stiff comparatively speaking. Now, obviously you can take a look at some of the other bars out there. They're going to vary. For example, I also have the ISF deadlift bar here, which is about an inch more than the Rogue, and it does feel a little bit better. So it's almost as an in-between with the Rogue and the Texas. And of course have the Kabuki, which is an outlier bar because that's a newer spec'd bar with the new USPA standards, which allow for longer deadlift bars. That has roughly 5 inches on the Rogue bar and a lot more whip, as you guys have probably been able to point out in a lot of these videos. So that's one of the reasons why I think the Rogue Ohio Deadlift bar isn't the best on the market. However, what I will say with that is it's kind of like a wine sommelier, if you will, meaning that they drink this wine and they're going, oh, I can take these notes of oak and cranberry and all this stuff. And meanwhile, here I am in my basement drinking Boone's Farm and I'm getting f***ed up. They both have the same end result for a lot of people. And unless you're specifically looking for that difference, many people won't be able to really tell. And that's what I feel about deadlift bars. Yes, you will get more flex or bend in other bars than this, but for most, it's not going to really matter too much. And one of the reasons why I recommend this bar the most is because Rogue has a boneyard section where you can get the bare steel Ohio Deadlift bar for as low as $195. Now, comparatively speaking, when you compare that against the bare steel Texas bar, it's almost twice the cost at $345. So you're saving $150 right off the bat by getting the boneyard version, which I think is a good deal. Now, this bar that I have is from the boneyard, but this is either a black zinc or an E-coat finish. They didn't tell me. They just said black shaft coming your way. Definitely not Cerakote. This costs $225, so still a very good bargain. Now, some of the other bargain deadlift bars out there are things like the ISF bar that I also have, which can retail for around $300 or so, depending on which finish you choose to get. But again, for $195 for a deadlift bar that's going to perform similarly to some of the other ones on the market, that's why I recommend this one the most to most people. Now, again, if you wanted the best, I would probably recommend the Texas for most. And although the Kabuki, which is relatively new, is great so far, I haven't spent a ton of time with it. And I do think that maybe to some, it might be a detriment having that much flex on the top, as it tends to throw you off a little bit. More time will tell. And I also think you'll see the Texas bar used in more meets across the country, at least for the foreseeable future as Kabuki tries to get more stuff in stock. And I know the USPA has named them a bar sponsor, but I think many of the meet directors are still using a Texas deadlift bar. So there's always that. So if you're interested in a best priced deadlift bar, definitely the Rogue Ohio, in my opinion. If you're looking for the best deadlift bar whatsoever, I still would tend to err with the Texas version by Buddy Caps. If you have any questions on this bar or other bars or deadlift bars in general, leave them in the comment section below. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.